The alarm screamed through the mining station like a dying animal. Daehyun dropped his wrench and looked up from the engine he was fixing. The lights flickered red, then went dark. Emergency power kicked in with a low hum. "This is Commander Hyun-woo," the speaker crackled. "All personnel, to emergency stations. We have unknown vessels approaching. This is not a drill." Daehyun grabbed his toolkit and ran toward the command center. His boots echoed on the metal floor. He had worked on this asteroid mining station for 3 years now. It was supposed to be safe, boring work. Fix machines, collect payment, stay away from trouble. That was the plan after he left the military. Minseo nearly crashed into him at the corridor intersection. Her face was pale, eyes wide with fear. "Daehyun, the scanners show 5 massive ships. They're not responding to our signals. Get to the communications room," he told her. "Keep trying to reach them. I'll check if we can get the defense systems online." She nodded and ran toward her station. Daehyun knew their defense systems were old and poorly maintained. The company that owned the station spent money on mining equipment, not weapons. They never expected an attack this far from the core systems. The command center was chaos. Hyun-woo stood at the main console, his hands moving across controls that didn't respond. Kyung, the medical officer, stood beside him, looking at the scanner displays. "They're not human ships," Kyung said quietly. "The computer doesn't recognize the design." Daehyun moved to the defense console. He pulled up the weapon systems and cursed under his breath. Nothing worked. The targeting array was offline. The missile tubes were empty, and the energy shields hadn't been maintained in months. "We need to evacuate," he said. Hyun-woo shook his head. "The escape pods are on the other side of the station. We'd never make it before they." The entire station shook. Daehyun grabbed the console to keep from falling. Alarms screamed louder. On the displays, he watched as something attached to the station's hull. Cutting tools began burning through the outer walls. "They're boarding us," Hyun-woo whispered. The commander reached for the station's self-destruct controls, but another explosion threw everyone to the floor. Smoke filled the room. Daehyun's ears rang from the blast. He tried to stand, but his legs wouldn't cooperate. Through the smoke, he saw them enter. They moved on 6 legs, their bodies covered in dark armor that looked like insect shells. They were tall, maybe 8 feet, with 4 arms that ended in sharp claws. Their heads were triangular, with huge black eyes that reflected the emergency lights. One of them pointed a weapon at Hyun-woo. The commander tried to speak, tried to surrender, but the creature fired. Hyun-woo dropped without a sound. Kyung screamed and ran for the door. Another creature caught her before she took 3 steps. It grabbed her with 2 arms and examined her like a scientist studying an insect. It made clicking sounds that might have been language. Daehyun forced himself to stay still and watch. That was what his military training had taught him. When captured, observe everything. Learn about your enemy. Survival came from information. The creatures moved through the station quickly. They killed anyone who ran or fought. They captured anyone who surrendered or froze. Daehyun let them take him without resistance. They bound his hands with something that looked organic, like hardened resin. It was strong and cut into his wrists. They gathered the survivors in the cargo bay. Daehyun counted 12 humans left alive from a crew of 43. Minseo was among them, her face bruised but alive. They made eye contact across the room, and he gave her a small nod. "Stay calm. Stay alive." One of the creatures approached Daehyun. It leaned down, studying him with those huge black eyes. It reached out with one clawed hand and poked his chest, his arms, his legs. The touch was curious but rough, like someone examining a strange animal at a zoo. The creature made more clicking sounds. Another one approached. This one wearing more elaborate armor with symbols that might have been rank insignia. It examined Daehyun the same way, then made what sounded like a laugh. The sound was wrong, like metal scraping on metal. It spoke, and somehow the words came through in broken human language. A translation device, Daehyun realized. Soft. Weak. Small. This species conquered space? More clicking laughter from the others. They loaded the survivors into a transport ship. The interior was hot and humid, designed for creatures that evolved in a different environment. Daehyun's shirt stuck to his skin with sweat. They were thrown into a holding cell with walls that looked like hardened foam. Hours passed, maybe days. There was no way to tell time in the cell. They received water that tasted strange, and food that was barely edible. Minseo sat beside Daehyun, in silence, for a long time before speaking. "What do they want with us?" she whispered. Daehyun had been watching the guards, studying their patterns and behavior. "I don't think we're prisoners of war. They're not asking questions or demanding information. We're cargo, property. Slaves? Maybe. Or worse." Through the cell's transparent section, Daehyun could see other holding areas. There were creatures from other species, all looking defeated and broken. Some were massive, with thick armor and natural weapons. Others were small and quick. All of them were captives. One of the guards noticed him watching and made that scraping laugh again. It pointed at Daehyun, then at the other prisoners, then made a gesture like something dying. The message was clear. Minseo grabbed his arm. "Daehyun, what was that?" He kept watching the guard, memorizing every detail. The way it moved, where it kept its weapons, how often it checked the cells. Information was survival, I think, he said slowly. "They're going to make us fight." The transport ship jumped to faster than light speed, carrying them away from everything they knew. In the humid darkness of the cell, surrounded by the clicking language of creatures that saw them as entertainment, Daehyun began to plan. He was no longer a mechanic trying to forget his military past. He was a soldier again, whether he wanted to be or not, and soldiers survived by any means necessary. The planet they called Korvesh burned under 3 suns. Daehyun stood in chains with the other human captives as they were marched off the transport ship. The heat hit him like a physical force. The air tasted like copper and smelled of something he couldn't identify. The arena rose before them, a massive structure of dark metal and stone that stretched toward the purple sky. It was ancient, worn by time and violence. The walls were stained with colors that might have been blood from a dozen different species. They were taken underground through tunnels that dripped with moisture. The guards pushed them into cells carved from rock. Daehyun found himself sharing a space with 2 other humans he hadn't seen on the transport, a young man who couldn't stop shaking, and a woman with calculating eyes. "I'm Daehyun," he said quietly. The young man looked up. "Junho. I was on a research vessel. They killed everyone else." His voice cracked. "Why did they keep us alive?" The woman answered before Daehyun could. "Entertainment. My name is Yuna. I'm a xenobiologist. Was a xenobiologist." She gestured toward the cell walls. "See those marks? Claw marks from dozens of different species. This is a fighting arena." Junho's face went even paler. "Fighting? But we're not soldiers. I'm just a student. I don't know how to fight." Daehyun sat down on the stone floor, his back against the wall. "Then you learn. Quickly." 2. For 3 days they sat in that cell. Other cells held other captives, creatures of all shapes and sizes. Daehyun watched them all. Some were massive, built like walking tanks with natural armor. Others were quick and agile with claws that could tear metal. All of them looked defeated. On the 4th day, the guards came. They grabbed Junho and dragged him toward the tunnel that led up to the arena floor. The young man screamed and fought, but the guards barely noticed his struggles. "No," Yuna grabbed at the bars. "He's just a kid." Daehyun pulled her back. "Save your energy. Watch and learn." The cell had a small window that looked out onto the arena floor. They pressed against it and watched. The arena was enormous, maybe 200 meters across. The floor was sand and broken stone. Obstacles and ruins provided cover, but not much. Thousands of the insect creatures filled the stands, their clicking laughter echoing like rain on metal. Junho was pushed into the arena. He fell to his knees in the sand, his hands still bound. Across from him, a gate opened. What emerged made Dae-Hyun's breath catch. The creature stood 3 meters tall on 2 legs. It had thick gray fur and arms that ended in claws the size of knives. Its face was bear-like, but wrong, with too many teeth and eyes that glowed red. It wore armor on its chest and carried a massive club studded with metal spikes. The creature roared, and the sound shook the walls. The crowd clicked faster, excited. Junho tried to run. The creature caught him in 3 steps. What happened next was over quickly, but not quickly enough. Dae-Hyun forced himself to watch every second. This was information. This was how to survive. When the guards brought another human to their cell that evening, Dae-Hyun was ready with questions. The newcomer's name was Taejin, an engineer like him. He had watched 3 matches that day. "They make us fight trained warriors," Taejin said, his voice hollow. "Species that evolved for combat. We're supposed to die quickly for their entertainment. Then we don't fight like warriors," Dae-Hyun said. "We fight to survive." Yuna looked at him. "You have military training." Two. Some. Enough. He stood and began examining the cell, looking for anything useful. Humans don't win fights by being the strongest. We win by being smart, by lasting longer, by using everything we have. The next morning, the guards came for Dae-Hyun. Min-seo saw them taking him and called out from her cell down the corridor. "Dae-Hyun!" He looked back at her and nodded once. Then they dragged him up through the tunnels toward the light. The arena floor was worse than it looked from the cell window. The sand was stained dark with old blood. The heat from the 3 suns beat down without mercy. The crowd's clicking laughter surrounded him like insects in the night. A creature in elaborate armor stood in a viewing box above the arena. It raised 4 arms for silence. A translation device made its words understandable. "Behold the human," it announced. "A species that claims intelligence, but has skin like paper, and strength like children. Today it faces Thorak, champion of the crag people. We shall see if humans die as pathetically as they live." The gate across from Dae-Hyun opened. The crag warrior that emerged was even larger than the one that killed Junho. It wore battle armor, decorated with trophies from previous kills. It carried an axe in each hand, and when it roared, the crowd roared back. Dae-Hyun's hands were freed. A simple metal rod was thrown at his feet, meant to be a weapon. The crag had 2 axes. Fair wasn't part of the equation here. The crag charged. It was fast for something so large. Dae-Hyun didn't try to block or face it head-on. He dove sideways, rolling across the sand. The crag's axes hit the ground where he'd been standing, sending up a spray of sand and stone. The crowd clicked louder. They found his cowardice funny. Good. Let them laugh. Let them underestimate. The crag turned and charged again. This time Dae-Hyun ran for the ruins that dotted the arena floor. The crag followed, roaring challenges about honor and cowardice. Dae-Hyun ignored the words. Honor didn't keep you alive. He led the crag in circles, making it chase him. The creature was strong and fast, but it wore heavy armor under 3 suns. After 5 minutes, it was breathing hard. After 10, it was slowing down. Dae-Hyun was tired too. But humans evolved to run, to chase prey for hours until it collapsed. His ancestors hunted by making animals run until they died of exhaustion. He could outlast this warrior if he was smart about it. The crag tried to cut him off near a pile of broken pillars. Dae-Hyun let it think it had him cornered, then scrambled up and over the stones. The crag's armor caught on the rocks. It took precious seconds to free itself. Those seconds let Dae-hyun circle back and strike. Not at the armored body, but at the back of the knee joint where armor plates met. The metal rod wasn't sharp, but momentum and angle made up for that. Something cracked. The crag stumbled. Now the crowd's clicking changed pitch. This wasn't supposed to happen. The crag spun, swinging both axes in wide arcs. Dae-hyun backed away, staying just out of reach. The warrior tried to charge again, but the injured leg betrayed it. It fell to one knee. Dae-hyun didn't hesitate. He struck the same knee again, then dove away before the axes could reach him. The crag roared in pain and rage. It tried to stand, but the leg wouldn't support its weight. For a moment, Dae-hyun considered finishing it. That's what the crowd wanted. That's what a warrior would do. Instead, he stepped back and dropped the metal rod. He raised his empty hands toward the viewing box, where the arena master sat. "I yield my kill," he said clearly. "The warrior fought with honor. Let it live." The clicking stopped. Silence fell over the arena, like a physical weight. The arena master stared down at him, with those huge black eyes. Finally, it made a gesture. Guards came and dragged the injured crag away. They removed Dae-hyun as well, throwing him back into his cell. Yuna and Taejin stared at him in disbelief. "You won," Yuna whispered. "How?" Dae-hyun lay down on the stone floor, every muscle screaming. "I didn't try to win their way. I won ours." That night, the guards brought better food to his cell. The clicking laughter in the tunnels had changed to something else, something that might have been uncertainty. Word spread through the arena like fire through dry grass. The human had won, not through strength or speed, but through something the other species didn't understand. The guards clicked among themselves, and Dae-hyun caught fragments of their translated words. Clever, coward, strange. They brought him to the arena 3 more times in the next 2 weeks. Each time, the odds grew worse. Each time, Dae-hyun survived. The second match was against 2 smaller creatures, quick and venomous. They moved like cats. All grace and deadly intent, Dae-hyun used the arena's obstacles, made them pursue him through narrow gaps where they couldn't work together. When one got separated from the other, he dropped stones from a ruined pillar onto its head. The other one he outlasted, staying just out of reach until its venom sacs were empty and exhaustion made it sloppy. The third match was in darkness against something that could see in the dark better than him. Dae-hyun couldn't see it, but he could hear it. He threw rocks in different directions, made it chase sounds instead of him. When it finally lunged toward a noise he'd created, he was waiting 3 steps to the left with a sharp piece of broken metal. The fourth match was against a warrior in full armor with an energy shield. Dae-hyun couldn't hurt it directly, but he noticed the shield flickered every time it activated. He made the warrior chase him for 20 minutes, made it activate that shield over and over until the power cell died. Without the shield, the armor had weak points. The warrior was honorable and skilled, but honor didn't account for someone who fought without rules. Between fights, Dae-hyun taught the other human prisoners everything he learned. The cells were close enough to whisper between them at night, when the guards changed shifts. "The Valth guards check our cells every 4 hours," he told Taejin through the stone wall. "Always the same pattern. They trust their routine too much." "What good does that do us?" Taejin whispered back. "Information is survival. Learn everything. Watch everything." During the day, when they were given water and food, Dae-hyun watched the guards and listened. The Valth language was complex, but patterns emerged. After a week, he understood basic commands. After 2 weeks, he could follow simple conversations. "They're betting on you," Yuna told him one morning. "I heard the guards talking. The odds change every day. You're becoming popular." "Ah, popular means profitable. Profitable means they'll keep me alive longer." Dae-hyun examined the cell walls for the 100th time. The stone was old, but the bars were newer. Different materials, different strengths. How's Minseo? Scared. They haven't called her to fight yet. Yuna paused. Daehyun, they're talking about a big match. Something special. The special match came 3 days later. The arena master announced it personally, standing in the viewing box with arms spread wide. The human has amused us with its tricks and its cowardice. But can it survive against the Skrell hunting pack? 5 warriors, trained from birth to kill together. We shall see if human cleverness can defeat true predators. The crowd's clicking reached a fever pitch. The guards pushed Daehyun into the arena, and this time they gave him nothing. No weapon, no tool, just his hands and whatever he could find. 5 gates opened simultaneously. From each one came a Skrell warrior. They looked like reptiles crossed with birds, standing on powerful legs with arms that ended in curved talons. Their heads were sleek and predatory, with too many teeth. They wore light armor and carried spears with crystalline points that glowed with energy. The 5 warriors spread out immediately, surrounding him. They didn't charge. They moved with precise coordination, tightening the circle. These were trained hunters who knew how to work as a unit. Daehyun ran toward the nearest one. The move so sudden and unexpected that the Skrell hesitated. That moment of surprise let him get inside the range of its spear. He grabbed the weapon's shaft, twisted it sideways, and used the Skrell's own grip against it. The spear came free, and Daehyun had a weapon. The other 4 attacked as one. Daehyun didn't try to fight them. He ran again, this time toward a section of the arena where broken pillars created a maze of stone. The Skrell followed, their hunting calls echoing off the walls. In the narrow passages, their numbers didn't matter as much. They couldn't surround him or use their coordinated tactics. Daehyun picked them off one at a time, using every trick he knew. He collapsed stones to block paths. He used the spear to keep them at distance, then dropped it and used broken rock when they got close. He led them in circles until they were tired and frustrated. The Skrell were skilled, but they fought like hunters expecting prey to run in predictable patterns. Daehyun didn't run in patterns. He doubled back, climbed when they expected him to hide, hid when they expected him to climb. It took an hour, but one by one, the Skrell fell or yielded. By the end, 3 were unconscious. 1 had a broken leg, and the last one stood in the center of the arena, with its spear pointed at Daehyun, but its hands shaking from exhaustion. Daehyun stood 10 meters away, bleeding from a dozen cuts but still standing. The Skrell watched him for a long moment, then lowered its spear and clicked what might have been respect. The arena was silent. Even the guards had stopped their usual clicking. Then, slowly, a sound rose from the crowd. It wasn't clicking laughter. It was something else. Something that might have been recognition. In the viewing box, Daehyun saw something that made his blood run cold. A Volth in armor different from the others, covered in military insignia, stared down at him with those huge black eyes. This wasn't an arena master or entertainment official. This was a soldier. And soldiers recognized other soldiers. Back in the cell, Yuna cleaned his wounds with water and torn cloth. "You're not just surviving anymore," she said quietly. "You're winning. Consistently. That's going to make them think." "Good," Daehyun said, though he wasn't sure if it was good or not. "Let them think," Taejin whispered through the wall that night. "I've been watching the guard rotations. Like you said, the cells connect to maintenance tunnels. Old ones. Barely used. Can you access them? Maybe. I've been working on loosening a stone in my cell wall during rest periods. If I can get into the tunnels, I might be able to map them. Do it, but carefully, far above them, in the ships that orbited Corvesh. Admiral Vexthor watched recordings of the humans' matches. It watched the same patterns repeat. The human didn't fight with strength. It fought with thinking, adaptation, persistence. The Admiral recognized something in those patterns that the arena masters missed. Request intelligence reports on the human homeworld. It commanded its officers. I want to know everything about this species. They are classified as minor, Admiral, one officer responded. Limited technology. Weak military presence in their sector. Then explain. The Admiral pointed at the screen, where Daehyun fought 5 Skrell warriors. How this weak species defeated an entire hunting pack, using nothing but stones and cleverness. The officer had no answer. In his cell, Daehyun closed his eyes and thought about Minseo in her cell down the corridor, about the other humans scattered throughout the arena's underground, about Earth, somewhere distant and unreachable. He thought about every fight, every lesson learned, every piece of information gathered. The guards thought he was learning to survive in the arena. They were right, but not in the way they assumed. He wasn't learning to survive as a prisoner. He was learning everything about how the Valth thought, how they organized, how their systems worked. Information was survival. And he was gathering a lot of information. A guard walked past his cell, and Daehyun pretended to sleep. But he counted the footsteps, noted the timing, added it to the pattern he'd been building in his mind for weeks. The Valth had made their first mistake when they let him fight. Soon, they would realize it was a mistake. By then, it would be too late. The announcement echoed through every cell in the arena complex. Daehyun stood as the translation device on the wall crackled to life with the arena master's voice. Tomorrow, the Grand Arena hosts the Crucible match. The human will face not one opponent, but many. Not a test of skill, but a test of survival. Warriors from 6 species. War beasts bred for killing. Automated weapons of our empire's finest design. All in the arena at once. The broadcast will reach every world in Valth space. Let all see what becomes of those who dare think themselves clever. The device went silent. Down the corridor, Daehyun heard other prisoners making sounds of distress. This wasn't a match. This was an execution, dressed up as entertainment. They're going to kill you, Yuna said through the wall. This isn't something you can win. Probably not, Daehyun agreed. He sat down and began his usual routine of stretching and meditation. If tomorrow was his last day, he'd face it with a clear mind. Taejin's voice came through the other wall. I got into the maintenance tunnels. Found control panels for the arena systems. Water, power, atmospheric controls. All connected. Good work, Daehyun said. Mark the locations. If something happens to me, that information might help the others. You think you're going to die tomorrow? It wasn't a question. I think tomorrow's going to be interesting. That night, they brought Minseo to his cell. 2 guards opened the door and pushed her inside. She had bruises on her face, and her hands were shaking. The arena master said you could have a visitor, one guard said through its translator, so you remember what you're dying for. The guards' clicking might have been laughter. When they were alone, Minseo grabbed Daehyun's hands. You have to run. Find a way. I don't care if it's impossible. You have to try. 1. I've been trying since the day they took us, he said quietly. Everything I've done in that arena has been about learning. Their weapons, their tactics, their thinking. Tomorrow, I use everything I've learned. Against an army? Against whatever they throw at me. He squeezed her hands. I need you to do something. After the match starts, there's going to be chaos. You need to be ready. Tell Taejin to access those control panels. Tell Yuna to get the other humans organized. Can you do that? Taejin. Can you do that? She searched his face. You have a plan. Part of one. The rest I'll figure out as I go. The morning came too quickly. The guards brought Daehyun to a preparation room beneath the arena. They didn't bother with weapons this time. The room's walls showed displays of the arena floor, where workers were setting up obstacles and activating automated weapon systems. Through the displays, Daehyun saw the stands filling up. Not just Valth this time. Species from across their empire had come to watch. The clicking and roaring and whistling of 1,000 different languages created a wall of noise that shook the ground. In a luxury viewing box high above the arena, Admiral Vex Thor sat beside the arena master. The admiral had arrived that morning with an entire battle group, claiming it wanted to witness this spectacle personally. In truth, it had spent the night reviewing intelligence reports about Earth. The human homeworld has been quiet, one officer reported. No military buildups, no aggressive expansion. They are, as we assessed, a minor species. But the admiral kept watching the displays showing Daehyun's previous matches. Something wasn't right. The patterns of thinking, the tactical choices, the way the human never stopped adapting. These were not the actions of a primitive mind. Delay the crucible match, the admiral ordered suddenly. The arena master turned all 4 of its eyes toward the admiral. Delay? The crowds are assembled. Bets have been placed. The broadcast is beginning. I said, delay it. I need more intelligence on. You forget yourself, Admiral, a new voice said. The Empress herself had entered the viewing box, surrounded by guards. The arena is my domain. The match proceeds. The Admiral could not argue with the Empress. It settled back into its seat, mandibles clicking with anxiety. Below, Daehyun was pushed into the arena. The heat from 3 suns hit him immediately. The crowd noise was deafening. He walked to the center and looked around, noting every detail. 6 gates stood open around the arena's perimeter. From them emerged warriors of different species, all armed and armored. 2 Krag with massive axes. A Skrell pack of 3. 4 armored Valth carrying energy weapons. Something that looked like a living boulder with crystal spikes. A creature made of what seemed like living metal that flowed and reformed as it moved. Above them, automated weapon turrets tracked his movement. War beasts in cages snarled and roared, waiting to be released. The arena master's voice boomed across the space. Let the crucible begin. Everything attacked at once. Daehyun ran, not away from the threats, but toward the nearest weapon turret. He scrambled up its mounting post before it could track him, then used his weight to throw off its targeting. The turret swiveled wildly, and its energy blasts hit a charging Krag warrior instead. Daehyun dropped and rolled as a Valth's weapon fired where he'd been. He grabbed sand and threw it at the closest war beast's cage controls. It wasn't enough to open the cage, but the beast's roaring and thrashing made the automated systems pause, trying to analyze the new variable. The metal creature flowed toward him, morphing into blades and spikes. Daehyun couldn't hurt it directly, but he noticed it avoided the energy weapon blasts. He positioned himself so the Valth soldiers were between him and the metal creature. When they fired, their shots hit the creature instead, and it recoiled with sounds of pain. The human is making them fight each other, someone in the crowd observed. The clicking took on a different quality. Daehyun used every trick he'd learned. When the Skrell pack coordinated an attack, he led them into the firing arc of the automated turrets. When the boulder creature tried to crush him, he dodged at the last second, so it crashed into a Krag warrior instead. When the Valth soldiers formed a firing line, he dropped into a drainage channel he'd spotted during his scan of the arena and emerged behind them. 10 minutes into the match, 3 warriors were down. 15 minutes, and the automated systems were damaged from friendly fire. 20 minutes, and the war beasts had been released but were attacking other warriors instead of the human who kept staying just out of reach. This is impossible. The arena master clicked. It should have been over in minutes. This was into raiding bond. In the viewing box, Admiral Vex Thor leaned forward. It's not fighting them. It's conducting them. Like prey that turns predators against each other. Then Junho appeared. Guards dragged him into the arena and threw him toward the center. The young man fell in the sand, looking up in terror as a Krag warrior raised its axe. Daehyun didn't think. He grabbed a spear from a fallen Skrell and threw it. The spear caught the crag in the shoulder gap of its armor. The warrior roared and turned toward this new threat. Dae-hyun ran to Junho and pulled him up. I can't. I don't know how to. Then learn fast. Together they moved through the chaos. Dae-hyun called out warnings, telling Junho where to step, when to duck, how to stay alive for just one more second. The young man was terrified, but he listened. He followed. He survived. The crowd's clicking changed again. This was no longer a human fighting alone. This was a human protecting another human. Even in the middle of an impossible situation. Pack bonding, Admiral Vexthor said quietly. They protect each other, even when it makes survival harder. 30 minutes into the match, only the metal creature and 2 Voth soldiers remained standing. Dae-hyun and Junho were both bleeding. Exhausted, barely able to stand. But they were still standing. Dae-hyun faced the metal creature. It flowed toward them, but slower now, damaged by the energy weapons that had hit it. He grabbed Junho's hand. Run when I say run, he whispered. The creature lunged. Dae-hyun pulled Junho sideways and they rolled into a crater created earlier by an explosion. The creature flowed overhead. And in that moment of exposure, the 2 Voth soldiers fired their weapons. The combined blast caught the creature's center mass, and it collapsed with a sound like breaking glass. Silence fell across the arena. The 2 Voth soldiers lowered their weapons. They looked at the 2 humans, then at each other, then at the carnage spread across the arena floor. Dae-hyun stood slowly, pulling Junho up with him. Every muscle screamed. Blood ran down his face. But he met the eyes of the Voth soldiers and stood firm. One of the soldiers lowered its weapon completely. The other followed. They would not fire on prey that refused to die. Dae-hyun took 1 step forward, then another. His legs gave out, and he collapsed. The last thing he heard before darkness took him was the sound of the crowd, clicking in a rhythm that might have been shock, or respect, or fear. Dae-hyun woke to the sound of alarms. He was in a medical cell, his wounds wrapped in alien bandages that burned with healing chemicals. Junho lay on another platform nearby, unconscious, but breathing. Through the walls came sounds of chaos, running footsteps, and shouting in the Voth language. The door burst open. Yuna rushed in with Taejin behind her. Can you walk? What's happening? Everything. She pulled him to his feet. After your match, the Voth leadership had an emergency meeting. The Admiral wanted to know more about humans. It accessed military databases. It found out that Earth has been tracking the raids. Taejin supported Junho as they moved into the corridor. Other human prisoners were being freed from cells by Minseo, and a group Dae-hyun didn't recognize. They wore combat armor that looked human but more advanced than anything he'd seen before. Who are they? Rescue. Minseo ran to him and grabbed his hand. Earth sent them. They've been waiting for the right moment. They reached a viewing area overlooking the arena. The sky above Corvesh was filled with ships. Human ships. Their designs sleek and deadly. Energy weapons fired in controlled bursts, disabling Voth vessels without destroying them. It was surgical, precise, and terrifying in its efficiency. A transmission broadcast across all Voth frequencies. A human woman's face appeared on every display in the arena complex. She wore a captain's uniform. Her expression calm and cold. I am Captain Jiwon of the Earth Defense Fleet. For weeks you have held our people captive. You have forced them to fight for your entertainment. You have underestimated us. She paused, and the displays switched to show footage from Dae-hyun's matches. This man is a mechanic. He fixed engines on a mining station. He is not a soldier, not a warrior, not one of our trained fighters, and yet he survived everything you threw at him. So let me ask you something. If a mechanic can do this, what do you think our actual military can do? The transmission ended. The Voth defense systems tried to respond, but their weapons couldn't lock onto the human ships. Every time they fired, the humans were already gone. moved to new positions, striking from unexpected angles. In the viewing box where the Empress had watched Daehyun's match, Admiral Vex's Thor stood before her. "We must evacuate immediately. The humans have technology we never suspected. Our intelligence was completely wrong." "How?" The Empress's clicking was sharp with anger. "How did we miss this?" "Because they let us miss it," the Admiral said quietly. "They knew about our raids. They watched us take their people. And they waited, studied us, learned about us. The same way that Human learned in the arena." Below, in the arena tunnels, Daehyun moved with the rescue team. The leader was a man named Dong-hyun, who moved like a shadow and carried weapons that seemed to anticipate targets before they appeared. "How long have you been watching?" Daehyun asked as they helped other prisoners toward evacuation points. "Since your second match," Dong-hyun said. "We tracked the Valth from their first raid. We had to know what we were dealing with before responding. Your survival gave us time to position properly. People died while you waited. Yes. And I'll carry that weight forever." Dong-hyun placed charges on a security door. "But if we'd rushed in blind, more would have died. You taught us how they think by surviving. We used that information." The charges exploded and they moved through. Daehyun saw something that made him stop. A Valth control station, its systems still active. He moved to it and began accessing files. "What are you doing?" Yuna asked. "What I've been doing since they put me in that arena." "Learning." His fingers moved across the alien interface. "Every time they let me fight, I watched. I learned their language, their systems. During matches, when everyone watched me run and hide, I was really mapping their technology." He pulled up schematics, military deployment plans, communication protocols, everything the Valth Empire used to coordinate their forces. He downloaded it all to a storage device Dong-hyun provided. "You were spying," Taejin said in awe. "The whole time. I was surviving." This was just part of it. They reached the evacuation point where human transport ships waited. Minseo helped load the wounded while ships overhead continued to disable Valth defenses. It was almost too easy, Daehyun thought. The Valth couldn't adapt fast enough. On the command ship orbiting Corvesh, Captain Jiwon received reports from all teams. All human prisoners recovered. Minimal casualties. The Valth fleet scattered and confused. "Broadcast the terms," she ordered. Her face appeared again on every Valth display. "Empress Shelkara. These are our terms. Immediate cessation of all raids on human territory. Release of all captives, not just human but all species you've taken. Full reparations for damages. A non-aggression treaty with provisions will dictate. You have 1 hour to respond." In her throne room, the Empress watched the human fleet hold perfect formation around her world. Her guards clicked nervously. Her advisors offered no solutions. Admiral Vex Thor spoke carefully. "We have no choice. They have complete tactical superiority, and..." It pulled up the intelligence reports. "Their homeworld has 11 billion individuals. Their military is larger than we estimated by factors we cannot calculate. We saw them as weak because they chose not to show strength. We made them angry," the Empress said softly. "No," the Admiral corrected. "We made them pay attention. There's a difference, and it terrifies me." The Empress clicked her acceptance of terms. Days later, on the transport back to Earth, Daehyun stood in the observation deck with Minseo. Behind them, Junho and Yuna talked quietly with Taejin and the others they'd met in captivity. All of them were going home. "The Valth are telling everyone about humans now," Minseo said, reading from a datapad. "Warning other species. They say we're persistence predators who never give up. That we adapt to anything. That we look weak but survive everything." "Good," Daehyun said. "Let them spread that message." A woman approached them. She wore a tactical specialist uniform and had kind eyes. "I'm Hayun. I coordinate intelligence analysis. Captain Jiwon wanted me to talk to you about the data you gathered. Is it useful?" "Useful?" Heyun laughed. You gave us complete access to their military infrastructure. Communications, logistics, deployment patterns. You did more intelligence gathering in a month than our analysts did in a year. How? I watched. Daehyun said simply. Every guard rotation, every system check, every time they thought I wasn't paying attention. Information is survival. Heyun studied him. The captain wants to know if you'd consider working with military intelligence. Your skills are unusual. I'm a mechanic. You're a survivor who thinks 3 steps ahead. That's more valuable than you know. Daehyun looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Valth Empire was regrouping, reassessing, telling stories about the humans who refused to die. Other species would hear those stories and make their own judgments. I'll think about it, he said finally. The transport jumped to faster than light speed, carrying them toward home. Behind them, on Corvesh, the grand arena stood empty. Workers were already converting it into something else. Something that wasn't built on the suffering of captives. The Valth had learned their lesson, though it had cost them dearly. In classrooms across the Valth Empire, teachers began including new lessons about humanity in their curriculum. They are not the strongest species, the lesson said. They are not the fastest or most heavily armored. But they adapt to anything. They protect their own, even when it costs them. They turn every disadvantage into information, every loss into learning. They do not fight to prove superiority. They fight to ensure survival. A young Valth student raised a claw. Teacher, are humans dangerous? The teacher considered the question carefully. Humans are only dangerous if you make the mistake of thinking they're weak. They are patient. They watch. They learn. And when they act, they do so with complete understanding of their opponent. The deadliest mistake our empire made was allowing one of them to fight in the arena. We thought we were testing him. He was studying us. Should we fear them? No. We should respect them. And we should never, ever, underestimate them again. Back on the transport, Daehyun finally allowed himself to sleep without planning escape routes or studying guard patterns. Minseo sat beside him, her hand in his. The nightmares would come later, the trauma of everything they'd endured. But for now, they were safe. The mechanic who became a survivor. The prisoner who became a spy. The human who showed an empire that weakness was just another word for underestimated. And across the galaxy, species learned a new rule. Never judge humans by their appearance. Never assume their kindness means inability. Never mistake their restraint for lack of capacity, because humans don't fight to prove they're strong. They fight because they refuse to stop surviving, and that makes all the difference.